Welcome to Math with Mrs. Bibb. Today I will be reviewing some material that you learned in 8th grade and then teaching you a couple new concepts that you will continue to have reinforced in Algebra 1 Honors. First, I would like to review how to solve an equation. So as I stated in the instructions for taking notes, I ask that you please write down everything that I write down. So, the first thing I want us to write down is how to solve an equation. Your goal is to get your variable alone. The first thing you'll do is you will distribute to get rid of parentheses if you have any. Then you will combine like terms on each side of the equal sign if you have any. You don't always have like terms. The next thing you will do is add or subtract constants and or variables to get each of those on opposite sides of the equal sign. And then the last thing you'll do is multiply or divide to get your variable alone. Now, there are exceptions to these rules, and I will show you a couple different ones, hopefully. Okay, here we go. So if you'll write down problem 1, and then we're going to discuss these steps that we have here. Okay, so our goal is to get the variable alone. N is our variable. Is there an N over here? No. Do we have parentheses? No, so I don't need to distribute. Is there a constant over here to combine with negative 140? No. Is there an N to combine over here with negative 14? No. So then that means I don't have to combine like terms. Now let's look. Over here with negative 140, is there an addition or subtraction sign? No. Same thing over here. No. So I don't have to add or subtract. And so now I'm on the last step, multiply or divide to get your variable alone. So here's my variable n. Negative 14 is with n. The instinct for a lot of students is to add 14 to both sides. But what operation is occurring between negative 14 and n? And that is multiplication. Multiplication is occurring between those two. So to undo multiplication, I have to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 14. And n is going to be positive 10. Because 10 times negative 14 is negative 140. And that would be the work I would expect you to show on your paper for solving for n. Now number 2, if you'll write that problem down, and then I'm sure many of you will already know how to get to that answer, but I do want to walk through it quickly. Our goal is to get x alone. X is on the right-hand side. I'm going to leave it over there. But my goal is to get it alone. Do I have parentheses to distribute? No. Do I have like terms on the left side of the equal sign? No. Do I have like terms on the right side of the equal sign? No. Do I have addition or subtraction? Yes, I have subtraction. I'm subtracting 10 from x. So to undo subtracting 10, I would do the inverse operation, which is add 10 to both sides. When I do that, x is now alone, and negative 19 plus 10 is negative 9. All right, let's go to the next slide. I'll remember those steps. Okay, so for number 3, our goal again is to get x, and look, I have 2 of them, x alone. Okay, let's go through those steps. Do I have parentheses? No. Do I have like terms on the left? No. Do I have like terms on the right? Yes. 4x and negative 1x are like terms. Let's combine those. The left will stay negative 3. 4x minus x is 3x. The next step, do I have addition or subtraction on the left side or the right side? No, I do not. Now I'm to the last step. I have multiplication, 3 times x. How do I undo multiplying? I divide. So x is going to equal negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. Next question. My goal is to get n alone. Look, there's 2 n's. Do I have parentheses? No. Do I have like terms on the left? No. Do I have like terms on the right? Yes, I do. Negative 5n plus 1n, that would be considered like terms. I'll leave my left-hand side what it is. Negative 5n plus 1n is negative 4n. And then I will go on to the next step. That step says, do you have addition or subtraction on either side? No, I do not, so I don't have to undo that. And so now I am going to do the last step, which multiplication is occurring between negative 4 and n. So I would divide to get n alone. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1, so that goes away. Leaves 1 in, and if you'll notice, I did not put a 1 there because as we enter high school and we are in honors, we do not need to put a 1 there. We realize it is understood that that says 1 in. And then to get my n alone and do the final operation, negative 20 divided by negative 4 is positive 5. So make sure you're writing down the problems and writing down what I'm writing down to earn that extra credit. On to the next one. Okay, so for this next one, my goal is to get x alone. Notice there's 2 x's. I do have parentheses. I do have addition signs and maybe subtraction once I distribute. I have variables on both sides, so I want to get one of the x's on the other side. So let's just go to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is distribute to get rid of those parentheses. Negative 7 times 3x is negative 21x. Negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. And I do not have parentheses on the right-hand side, so I will bring that down. The next step asks me, do I have like terms on the left or like terms on the right? And I do not have like terms, so I do not need to combine like terms on the left side or the right side of this equation. Now, I'm going to work on my variable first. I'm going to add or subtract depending on what operation I need to do to move my x to the other side. For me, it doesn't really matter which x you move, but a lot of my students have been taught to move the smallest x, which is my smallest one, to the largest. This is the largest. So I'm going to follow suit and do that. How do I move negative 21x? How do I get it away from the left side? I do that by adding 21x. When I add 21x, this becomes 0. So negative 28 will equal negative 4x plus 21x is 17x and bring down plus 23. Now, a lot of students, this is what they'll do. Plus 28, plus 28. Don't write that down because that is not what you should do. Your goal is to get your variable alone on one side and your constant on the other side. So right now, my variable is on the right-hand side. X is on the right-hand side. I want to keep X here, and I want to move this constant to the other constant. So leave X where it's at if it's alone. There's no other X in this math sentence now. So leave this alone. Move this plus 23. How do I move adding 23? Well, I should subtract 23 from both sides. So I'm going to subtract 23. Negative 28 minus 23. Well, that's two negatives that I'm trying to combine. So I'm going to add them and keep the sign. 8 plus 3 is 11. 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 5. So negative 51. Now I am at the final step. How do I get the x alone? What's happening between 17 and x? They're being multiplied. How do I undo multiplication? I would divide. Now, I know that 17 divides into 51 evenly, but if it did not, let's say it was negative 52, then I would have left my answer like this. I do not make it a decimal. I leave it as a fraction, and I leave it as an improper fraction. I would reduce if I could, but 52 and 17 do not have a common factor. But as we both know, that is not the answer that I got there. It is negative 51. Negative 51 divided by 17, hopefully you know that answer is negative 3. 3 times 17 is 51, and a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So x equals negative 3 is the answer there. Now for number 6, I'm going to distribute because my goal is to get my n alone. There is an n on the left that I just wrote down, and there's an n on the right also. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 2n is positive 8n. Now I am going to move my variable first. I'm going to move my smallest variable to my largest variable. So I'm going to get this n to the right-hand side. How do I undo adding n? Well, I subtract n. That's the inverse operation. So I'm going to subtract n from both sides. So that makes that go away. 38 is left alone over there, equals negative 4 plus 7n. And now, most students, like I said before, this is what they would do, subtract 38, subtract 38. But please try to get that in your mind that you do not do that because we need our variable on one side and our constants on the other side. So I've got to move this negative 4. How do I move negative 4 to the other side? Well, I do that by adding 4. Oops, sorry. Add 4. That makes 0. So 7n will equal 42. 38 plus 4 is 42. And then my final step is to multiply or divide to get my variable alone. And I need to divide by 7 because multiplication is what's happening. And I have n equals 6. And that is my final answer there. Before I do the problems that are listed here, I want to talk about a different kind of problem you're going to encounter on your assignment. And I'm going to call this number 6.5 so that I'm between 6 and 7. So you're going to encounter something that looks like this. Now, it might not look as fancy as that because I think it's just a little bit more simple. But that's okay. I want you to see it may be a little more complicated. Okay. Our goal is to get x alone. Dividing by 5 is with x, and adding 3 is over here. I do not have like terms on the left, and I do not have like terms on the right. So, as our steps indicated, you get rid of any addition or subtraction first. So, I have to get rid of this adding 3 first. How do I get rid of adding 3? The inverse operation of adding 3 is subtracting 3. Subtract that from both sides. So now I have x divided by 5 on the left side equals 2 minus 3 is negative 1 on the right side. Now, I am at my final step. I want to get x alone. What's the inverse operation of dividing by 5? And hopefully in your mind you said multiply by 5. So you multiply both sides by 5. X is left alone, and x will equal negative 5. So you're going to encounter a problem, and I believe your problems you encounter look more like this one right here. X divided by 5 equals negative 1. And to get rid of dividing by 5, you multiply both sides by 5 to make that go away and get your x alone. Now these problems that have two fractions, they are just a little bit different, but not very difficult. They are called together a proportion. When a ratio equals a ratio, that makes a proportion. And to solve a proportion, I'm going to write that, so you should write that too. To solve a proportion, cross multiply first. This is the only time you will hear me say cross multiply. I know some teachers teach you when you are dividing fractions to cross multiply. I do not do that. Division of fractions is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, but when you're solving a proportion, that is when you cross multiply. Now let me show you what I mean. I have a proportion. Ratio equals a ratio. So I'm going to multiply n times 10, denominator times numerator, and I'm going to set that equal to 4 times 7, numerator times denominator. So cross multiply. This equals this. So n times 10 is 10n equals 4 times 7 is 28. Now I need to divide to get my n alone. 10 divided by 10 is 1, so 1n equals 10 does not divide evenly into 28, so I'm going to leave that as a fraction, and I'm going to divide both of these by the factor they have in common, and I think that's 2. So my answer is going to be 14 fifths. That's the final answer here, 14 over 5. Okay, let's do the same thing for the next one. I'm going to cross multiply. 3 times k is 3k. 9 times 8 is 72. Oops, and I was about to write 78. I want to get k alone, so I'll divide both sides by 3. K will equal, and if you forget, then divide. 3 goes into 7 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract, you get 1. Bring down 2, you get 12. 3 goes into 12 4 times. And that is 24. K equals 24. So when you have a proportion, cross multiply and then solve. Okay, these proportions look just a little bit more complicated, so we're going to just dive right in. I'm going to multiply x times 9, and that gives me 9x. And I'm going to multiply 3 times x plus 9. And I did that on purpose because I want you to see we have to distribute. So I'll have 9x equals 3x plus 27. I don't have like terms. I have addition of 27, but I want to leave 27 here. So I want to move this 3x. How do I move 3x to 9x? I subtract it. So 6x will equal 27. Then I will divide both sides by 6, 27 is not divisible by 6, so I'll write it as 27/6. But they do both have a common factor of 3. So that will be 9/2. And that is my answer to number 9. We will multiply, cross multiply here because we have a proportion. Ratio equals ratio. 8p times 2 is 16p equals 7 times p minus 7. I will distribute. So 16p equals 7p minus 49. I will subtract 7p. I think that's 9p. 9p equals negative 49. I'll divide by 9. So p is going to equal negative 49 ninths. And I do not believe they have a common factor. So that's my answer, negative 49/9. Now, this is something new. You have not learned these type of inequalities in math so far. So the first thing I want to teach you is the way this looks. When you do this, you will always have a variable first. So I'm going to put n, or whatever letter you want to use is fine. You could use x. Next, you will have a symbol. You will have this symbol, greater than. You will have less than. You will have greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. That's what goes in this box. And then in this box, you will have the number that is shaded in or not shaded in. So you should write that down. Now I've got a couple things to write down first. How will you know when to use these symbols? Well, first of all, for this one, your shading will be to the right. And that actually goes for both of these. The shading is to the right. The numbers greater than will be to the right. And for this one and this one, your shading will be to the left. I better add the word shading. Now, inside my green box, I have these greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. If the circle is solid, you will use those symbols. If the circle is open, you will use those bottom two symbols. Okay, so let's just dive right in. I'll use n for my variable. So n is my variable. The number that is shaded or not shaded is 3. Now, I have to decide which of these symbols, hold on, I undid my 3. Now I have to decide which of these symbols I'll use. Well, the shading is to the left, so that's less than. Shading to the left, that's these two symbols, either less than or equal to. My circle is open, so that means my circle is open. That means I'm going to put this symbol less than here. N is less than 3. That's what that says, less than. N is less than 3. For the next one, I'm going to put my variable in, and I'm going to put the number 5 because that's what's shaded in. So I'm going to put the variable in and the number 5. Now, what direction is my shading? My shading, again, I apologize, I'll do one where it's not to the left. My shading, again, is to the left. So when your shading is to the left, you're going to use one of these two symbols. And my circle is solid, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. So n is less than or equal to 5. Now let's do number 12.5. And you should write down those problems for your notes that you're doing. You should write down and draw the graph for 11 and draw the graph for 12. When you're actually doing your assignment, I am okay with you just writing the answer. But when you're writing these notes, you should write down the problems that are there as well. Okay, so if you'll draw number 12.5, and I'm going to put 0. I don't make fancy number lines. I'm going to put 0, and I'm going to put -4. And I'm going to put a solid circle, and my shading is to the right of my -4. Okay, so n is my variable. Again, you can use any letter. I'm just going to use n. A lot of times I use x. -4 is the number that's shaded in. The shading is to the right, so it's either greater than or equal to or greater than. The circle on -4 is solid, so greater than or equal to. That is my answer to number 12.5. N is greater than or equal to -4. Now on to the next thing. Here's number 13. So if you'll draw that on your paper, I am going to put my variable in. I'm going to put my number 4. The shading is to the right, and 4 is solid, so that would be greater than or equal to 4. Okay, on to the next one. If you need to pause for a moment so you could write that down, that's perfectly fine. Now for 14 and 15, if you will please write what is typed there. Write each expression as an inequality. The sum of 5 times a number and 6 is no less than -24. And then for 15, the difference of a number and 2 is less than 4. And if you need to pause and do that, I'm just going to jump right in and start talking about what these words mean. The word sum, I'm going to switch back to red. The word sum means to add. The word times means to multiply. And I'm going to multiply 5 and a number. What am I going to add? I'm going to add 5 and a number and 6. So that's what I'm going to add. Now, is no less than. This is where you're going to use an inequality symbol. You're either going to use greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Now, most people are convinced to use less than, but it says no less than, so that means it's one of these two. Now, I have to decide, am I going to use am I going to use greater than -24 or greater than or equal to -24? So the question is -24 no less than -24? Is -24 greater than or equal to -24? And it is. It's greater than or equal to. So I'm going to use greater than or equal to there for that symbol, and then the number -24. Okay, so 5 times a number. So 5 times a number, the sum of 5 times a number and 6 is no less than -24. And that's my answer. So all you have to do is write each expression as an inequality, and that is my inequality. Now let's go on to number 15, the difference. The difference means to subtract. What are we subtracting? A number and 2. A number and 2. So the difference between a number and 2, there it is less than. So I'm either going to use greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Is less than. Hopefully you realize that less than is there. Is less than 4. That's the answer. N minus 2 is less than 4. And the next thing, we're going to draw a graph, and these are our final problems. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a graph down here, draw a number line for each of these, and I'll fill it in, and you may want to do the same. You can just do this. I'll go ahead and write them again as well. This is what I would do on my paper. I'm going to go ahead and put 0 and put 4, and then we'll do the rest in a moment. And then for 17, n is greater than 1. I'm going to go ahead and put 0 and 1. I'll come back in just one moment. Number 18, x is less than or equal to 2. I'm going to put 0 and then 2. And then for 19, x is greater than negative 5. So I'm going to put 0 and negative 5 in the proper place. And now I am ready to graph. Remember, if you have this symbol or this symbol, you have open circles. If you have this symbol or this symbol, you have closed circles. So I'm going to fill in those circles right now. I have greater than, which is the first one, so I'm going to have an open circle here. I have greater than, so I'm going to have an open circle. I have less than or equal to, so I'm going to have a closed circle. I have greater than, so I'm going to have an open circle. And then, let me highlight. This symbol and this symbol, I'm going to shade to the right, and I'll go back and write in just a minute. This symbol and this symbol, I'm going to shade to the left. Greater numbers that are greater than are to the right of a number, and numbers that are less than are to the left of a number. So, greater than 4, shade to the right. Greater than 1, shade to the right. And you're welcome to use a different color. Less than or equal to 2, shade to the left. And then greater than negative 5, shade to the right. That's all you need to know. That's everything review and everything new that I wanted you to get out of this first summer work assignment. I hope you are enjoying your summer so far, and I hope you have a wonderful day.